Hello, I'm the Dark Master, and welcome back to my video game reviews. In today's video, we shall be continuing my coverage of the Kirby series, the last game in what is often termed the quote-unquote Dark Age of Kirby, at least within the Kirby fanbase, with Kirby Mass Attack, or it is known in the Japanese language at Sumeri Kabi, which means Assemble Kirby. Does this game end up aging well, sending out this dark time for Kirby with a bang, or does it end up falling into the mediocre malaise that we often associate with spin-off games? Well, I played this game to 100% completion for the first time in preparation for this video, as it was one of the few games of this time period that I did not grow up playing, and hopefully I can give you a good answer, not blinded by nostalgia. So let us begin, as always, with the development history of this game. So, with this game, there's sadly relatively little to be said about its development compared to the last few games. Two of the head designers, Masanobu Yamamoto and Mari Shirakawa, both said that they desired to integrate unique gameplay concepts into the Kirby series. Thus, this game they decided against including copy abilities, arguably one of the key traits of Kirby, in favor of doing something more akin to Pikmin, where there are multiple Kirbys to handle, and they were concerned copy abilities would overly complicate things. Also in the game files, there is a number of unused enemies and other things, such as a grape food item, which may have been intermediate between bananas and melons in terms of points. There's blippers, bubblefish, some weird bee guy, an onion-based enemy, a block dragon, which was a prototype for Kill Elongo, and orange variant of Giga Clank Sprout, an aquatic Gordo variant, Hoppin, Hammer Knight. There's some weird gnome thing. There's Rockaton, a rocket guy, a tomato thing, a little demon thing, a big nose thing. There's this turtle-like thing, a UFO, and this spitting guy. There were also several enemy variations, like a very stickle-like Lady Ivy variant, and the platform that Blam Boom stands on. Though part of me would have liked to see that in the end, this decision had other impacts, such as them having to make level design that it was simple / more open. We'll talk about that later and how that impacts the game. They also implemented high scores, medals, and subgames to increase challenge and replayability. Interestingly, despite its development taking place while the 3DS was revealed / under development, the director decided to keep it to the DS, as it wouldn't have taken much advantage of the stereoscopic 3D, and thus a release on that system would have been, in his words, pointless. There was also an unused palette swap option that was likely removed due to it interfering with the color-based health system. DD would have also shown up as a playable character in the subgame Stratos Patrol EOS. Plasma Wisp was also meant to show up in that game as an antagonist. Notable staff members who worked on it include Shogo Sakai for the music, Mari Shirakawa as director, and Tadashi Kawai as assistant director. In the end, after a relatively smooth development cycle, it would be released for the DS first in Japan on August 14th, 2011, then in North America on September 19th, 2011, then on October 27th, 2011 for Australia, next in the EU on October 20th, 2011, and lastly for South Korea on December 1st, 2011. It was relatively well reviewed by critics, but it didn't end up selling all that well, being the lowest selling Kirby game to break a million copies, only selling 1.06 million. With all that pre-review stuff discussed, let's now start talking about the game proper, starting of course, as we always do with the story, and see how that is handled. So this story begins with Kirby, who decides to visit the Popopo Islands, an isolated region located in southern Popstar. He takes a nap in a nearby field on the area when suddenly the dark wizard Necrodius, leader of the evil Skull Gang, zaps him with a dark staff of dark magic that splits Kirby into smaller Kirbys that are much weaker. One by one, he destroys them in order to secure his rule over the darkness. However, one escapes and meets up with Kirby's heroic heart, which is basically the in-universe stand-in for the player's stylus. The two go through a set of 5 islands: Green Grounds that has 10 levels, Sand Canyon has 11, Deity's Resort, which, ironically makes him the victim to Kirby's rampage. Along the way, he also comes in contact with Daroche and his Squeak Squad, who returned from Kirby's Squeak Squad, which I've reviewed before, so check that out if you want to learn more. He explains to Kirby that in order to access Necro Nebula, the desolate home of the Skull Gang, he must gather the rainbow metals to dispel the protective dark clouds. Kirby manages to do so and enters into Necrodius' Dark Palace of Darkness. They fight rematches against all the bosses, and eventually they reach for their staff, but Necrodius swallows it, and he does battle with Kirby, using his 2 hands and head, but eventually he is defeated, dissipating into oblivion. Kirby then touches the staff, reforging himself into one person, who then takes the Warp Star home. As he does so, he reflects on how the darkness around his home makes it shine brighter all the more. So overall, nothing really groundbreaking, but it's overall a solid story for a Kirby game with some philosophy at the end, as well as a pretty intimidating bad guy. Now let us discuss arguably the most important aspect of any game, the gameplay, and see how that has aged. And so, much like with the case with Kirby's Canvas Crush, which I've reviewed before if you'd like to learn more, this is a platformer, but one in which you primarily use the stylus to control, as the Kirbys can't be controlled directly. They can't inhale enemies, of course, due to their small size, so instead you have to use the stylus, which in-game is referred to as Kirby's heroic heart, or just the star, which you then can tap on potential enemies for Kirby to pummel them. Or if you need a more precise attack or someone that's out of reach, you can fling them by flicking the stylus in the right direction to just beat the ever-loving stuffing out of someone. Since Kirby can no longer inhale, he can also no longer fly. Instead, the stylus can drag the Kirbys into the air, but it's heavily limited, even more so than his typical hovering, and takes some time for it to regain strength. This game also lacks a traditional health bar. Instead, each Kirby can take 2 hits. One and he turns blue, and if you get hit again, you die. But luckily, you can catch them before they fly away to restore them into their blue state. The recovery ring devices you find in the stage can heal them back to their pink healthy status. Some enemies and obstacles, however, can destroy Kirby with no chance of recovery, though, so be careful. You start with 1 Kirby, but can get more by collecting fruit, which fill up a meter as well as give bonus points for the high score. Fruit is an item you can collect that has several varieties. Apples are the most common and give 1 fruit meter point and 50 score points. Bananas are slightly less common, they give 10 fruit points and 100 bonus points. Melons are even more rare outside of fruit bonuses, which are these things that can happen if you only have a single Kirby on a stage select of an already cleared stage that give 30 fruit points and 300 bonus points. And last but not least, there's the Maxim Tomatoes, which gives 100 points, which is basically ensuring you get 1 new Kirby or a score bonus if you already have 10, and 1,000 score points. By the way, high scores are a thing that I already kind of mentioned, and they're kind of separate from the fruit point meter, but you really don't have to put much thought into it. It's just for bragging rights, really. The second item you can find in stages are these medals, with a total number ranging from 3 to 5 per level. One of these medals in each stage is designated as a rainbow medal, which you need to access the final world, but frankly you should try and get them all, as you unlock sob games and other goodies. The third item you can find is the Jumbo Candy, which is basically this game's equivalent to the Invincibility Candy that makes you invincible and big. Really neat. There's also air bubbles that appear in underwater stages. Yeah, there's underwater stages, and it basically functions as you'd expect. You tap the screen and you swim in a specific direction, but you definitely have an air meter that you want to be careful about, and these air bubbles can help you out. There's also these skull keys, but I'll talk about those later because they're not really as relevant as the other items we've talked. And you can stop by Dalroach's ship and he'll give you hints slash small talk regarding various medals. In addition to the basic controls of this game, it has more than any other all sorts of devices that Kirby can interact with. These devices include torches, they're sinking platforms, valves you gotta rotate to find Half-Life 3, trees, a tank, a spotlight, wallpapers, and deity portraits that you can peel away to find items, grates that hold items, spider webs that can trap Kirby, spin wheel flowers, that function like spin wheels can come in several varieties, including a 4-petal one, an 8-petal one that releases a enemy snooze root when finished, and one with a deadly spiny petal. The spire vines are another plant that comes in several variants. The orange spire vine is the standard one, which has an orange bulb that Kirby must pummel to top over. The purple spire vine will change in height, and you must time it to hit targets. The tall orange spire is in possession of a longer stem, and the large spire vine will roll downhill. Upon hitting a wall, it will break, though. Jerkweed, which can hide food, shells that can release bubbles or enemies, seesaws, rotating rings. There's propeller plants, potted plants, grip rings, cotton candy that can obscure your vision, and a container related to a boss we'll talk about later. All in all, the general gameplay is really engaging, and each level has something really different to it that makes it stand out. But this is just the main game, and this game, perhaps more than any other Kirby spinoff, heck, maybe even the entire series until very recently, has some of the most varied sub-games of all time. Let us start with the least substantive and work our way up, shall we? First is Kirby's Curtain Call, which is in essence a counting game where you have 3 seconds to get a look at a scene and correctly guess the number after the curtain falls. The total number of Kirby's can be up to 20. Not helping is how there are rocks, bean bonds, fruit, and mosos that can mess up your count. It's very fun, but does get a little repetitive at points. The same could be said of Dash Course, where you have to get Kirby down a path. You do so by selecting the right shape. Pressing the right one enough times leads you to getting a boost, but be careful as choosing the wrong one will get you slowed down via penalty. It has 3 different difficulties: a 10-second dash, a 30-second dash, and a 60-second dash. Again, it's fun, but it can be a little annoying slash repetitive after a bit. Field Frenzy is basically whack-a-mole. You got several enemies that must be tapped or not. Magmole gives you 10 points, Uru gives you 30 points, Wispy Woods gives you 60, but don't touch the Gordos as they cost you 50. After the round is up, a boss will show up, either Moly or the demonic Robo-Moly, that you must tap repeatedly enough times, otherwise you'll lose. There are a total of 6 levels. The first level has 3 holes, the second has 4, the third has 5, the fourth has 6, the fifth has 7, while the sixth doesn't really add another hole, but has the outer set of holes rotate. It is perhaps the most complex whack-a-mole game I've ever played, and has some replayability, but it is far from the best of the game. Kirby's Brawl Ball, however, is where stuff starts to get really good, being in essence a modern reimagining of the 1993 Game Boy spin-off Kirby game, Kirby's Pinball Land, which I've already reviewed if you'd like to learn more about that. So this is basically a pinball game that plays like pinball with bosses, and frankly controls way better than any Game Boy game could ever hope due to the increased DS hardware capabilities. With the main board and 4 additional boss boards, I'll talk about those more later. Overall, it's a really fun subgame that does a great job, but the best subgames are the following ones. Stratos Patrol EOS is in essence a classic Galaga type arcade shooter. You see, you control Kirby, who fires continuously, so all you have to do is position them by using the stylus. You can get additional Kirbys by destroying the Scullies that show up. There are 6 stages, each with a distinctive visual theme and boss, which we'll discuss later on. Overall, it's a really fun to shoot the heck out of enemies, and really has a lot of replayability. You also get a cameo of the enemy sales guy from Kirby Right Back At Ya on the game over screen, and I love the anime, so seeing him here was really great. Since this game was made long after the anime had finished production and had stopped airing. Then there is Survival Rush, which is this game's equivalent to the arena. However, it has a unique spin. Instead of just fighting the boss or mini bosses in a set order, you have a choice between one of 3 doors, each marked by a specific number, which is the minimal Kirby's required to enter. Due to this, you have to be careful not to lose too many, or you may be barred from fighting certain bosses. There is a limited amount of maximum tomatoes to heal or regain Kirby's. Overall, it's rather fun, and I recommend you go for those who have the highest number of required Kirby's first, just so that they don't get barred from you due to mistakes made by cheaper bosses. But the best subgame has to be Kirby Quest, a sort of RPG mixed with a timing minigame where you have to time an attack to hit the enemies, and there are several different attacks represented by bars of different colors. Good attacks are marked by red and include Kirby hitting a target from behind with a rubber hammer, him running across the screen, him using a spin kick, him doing a Megaton punch, and a smash punch, all of which do from 20 to 30 damage per Kirby. Great attacks marked by orange do anywhere from 40 to 80 damage per Kirby and include a hammer-based attack, a tornado-based attack, shooting a laser, and using the wheel ability. Lastly are the awesome ability attacks, which are represented by the pink bar and are often references to other Kirby or HAL games. These include him riding on a Moto Shotso from Kirby Superstar, which I've reviewed before, him eating super spicy curry, thus breathing fire on them akin to the original Dreamlands. Dynablade is swooping on a foe who is also from Kirby Superstar, him summoning a horde of gators, which is a reference to Superstar, him riding on a tank bot from Kirby's Epic Yarn, which can be either the 1 or 2 player variation, him using Galaxia and turning into Kabuki Kirby from that 3DS CGI Kirby Right Back At Ya special that I hope to eventually review. Though that'll also be one of the last things to review, so don't be too impatient. This is a fun sub-game and makes me want a full-fledged Kirby RPG, as there's a lot of risk, right? Because if you miss one of these 3 bars, the enemy will get a chance to attack you. There's also a music player to listen to the OST, and a checklist to help with completion. Overall, the gameplay in this game was amazing and has to be some of the highest level of variety in any single Kirby game. With that, let us now cover the game's presentation, starting with the first and most obvious half, the graphics, and see how they stand up. Kirby's Mass Attack was the last game in the Kirby series to utilize primarily sprite based artwork, and man, can I just say how depressing it is that Nintendo doesn't really do much with sprites anymore in favor of 3D models? But man, it went out with a bang, as these are some of the most expressive sprites in the entire series. Kirby looks adorable, even when he is getting hurt. The various enemies are also very well animated, with both old and new having some very highly expressive sprites that just give off a very Kirby vibe, if you know what I mean. Each of the five worlds has a distinct visual vibe to them. Green Grounds is a typical grassy field, World 111 greens type region that we've seen multiple times. The first two levels of this place sort of teach you the ropes and are really nice by the very forested vibe going on here, and the backgrounds are just astounding in this game. The third stage takes place in a creepy forest. Stage 4 is cloudy and primarily underground. Stage 5 is another forest region with some underground areas. Stage 6 is another forested area. Stage 7 has you go up a very large tree. Stage 8 is especially forested with lots of wispy wood relatives that you gotta deal with. Stage 9 is another forest, but this time has a lot of really bouncy mushrooms, while Stage 10 is the first underwater area. I'd also like to point out how the design of this first world is an allusion to the island seen in episode 74, Caterpillar Thriller, which is a nice callback to the anime, and that's an episode I've reviewed before if you'd like to check out. The second world, Sandy Canyon, is your typical desert inspired affair, with the first level best exemplifying the American Southwest sort of thing. They then enter into an aquifer in stage 2, which is, you know, kind of neat. You don't really see that a lot. Stage 2 is more plain desert. Stage 3 takes place in a grotto. I love the ruined backgrounds, though. Gives off the vibe of some ancient civilization. Stage 4 takes place in the afternoon, so there's nice colors. Stage 5 sees you explore a tower. Then we see just a bunch of balloon fun. Stage 5 sees you explore more ancient ruins of some lost civilization consumed by the dunes. Stage 7 sees you dodging sandstorms, which look wonderful. Stages 8, 9, and 10 and 11 are much more, ruined areas, but, there's not much to say that I haven't already mentioned. D is one of the more varied worlds, while also filling the sort of water world slash carnival world tropes. The first stage is a beautiful sky with clouds and bubbles. Stage 2 is a pachinko machine. Stage 3 sees you surf down an oceanic region. Stage 4 sees you on a tropical island doing a quiz. Stage 5 has a dark underwater level in the abyss with some really odd ruins. Stage 6 is a larger tropical island. Stage 7 sees one enter into a sunken ship. Stage 8 is a chilly region with snowmen. Stage 9 sees you in an icy cavern fleeing from freezy wrecks. Stage 10 sees you go through a very cool looking kitchen, while stage 11 sees the Kirbys climb up a tree that they must carefully move around so as it doesn't tip over and kill them all. Volcano Valley is a fiery inferno that is the lava land trope of the game. Stage 1 has Kirby navigating a lava filled region with some pools of water sprinkled in. Stage 2 is more underground. Stage 3 is an elevator sequence where you have to dodge rocks. Stage 4 is a cooler colored cave area. Stage 5 is a spooky graveyard. Stage 6 has him go through a haunted mansion filled with darkness. Stage 7 takes place in a dark forest. Stage 8 sees you go up a skull tower. Stage 9 is basically the mini boss rematch, akin to the Tower of Mini Bosses seen in Kirby's Adventure. Stage 10 sees you go into a spaceship and thus go into space, while Stage 11 is a low gravity space level. It's honestly a really neat world. Necron Nebula is a craggy place with rematches against the old foes. There's not really much to say about this. I mean, they're a slightly different color, indicating that they're supposedly, according to some sources, meant to be undead. Not the most notable, but the arena with the final boss is kind of creepy. The sub-games all have their own charm, even the least of them, such as that matching game I mentioned earlier, has a bit of a fear vibe. Interestingly, the title screen of Kirby Quest is a reference to the game Arcana, which was one of the first games HAL worked on, with the Gator Excellent Attack also being an allusion to The Revenge of the Gator, another HAL Game Boy game. Now that we've seen the graphics, which are amazing, let us go on to the music of this game, aka the second half of the presentation, and see if it is as good. Alright, so right off the bat, the title screen music, called in-game Kirby Collecting, is just really cheery, opening on a triumphant intro that rapidly goes into the melody, which is a rising tonic triad that holds for a bit in what is called a high note before transitioning into an arpeggio. The second time the melody plays, it transitions to a relaxing ending before looping. Honestly, it's one of the best themes in the game, and perhaps the most iconic. The next theme, Tree to Tree, makes good use of the percussion seen in guitars and güiros, a traditional instrument of the native Taino people of the Caribbean. The next theme, Woods Wayfarer, is another really joyful one, but it gets a little repetitive. The darker variant in minor key seen in the third, eighth, and 10th stage of Green Greens honestly sounds better and is less annoying. The theme, Fetching Fruit, really has sort of minigame vibe aided by the usage of the xylophone. The next two themes, Desert Scorcher and the faster paced Lifted Upwards from Sand Canyon, are both remixes of Masugaba's theme from episode 74 of the anime Caterpillar Thriller, which I've mentioned before. And honestly, they both sound really amazing. Ruins Ahead, seen in the third, sixth, seventh, ninth, and 10th stage of Sandy Canyon, is really an upfront theme, unloading its musical juices upon you. Swallowed Exit is another very energetic Arabian theme that makes heavy usages of trumpets and sitars. Southern Shore, seen in the first, second, third, sixth, and fourth stage of Didi Resort, has heavy Caribbean vibes thanks to the utilization of literal wave sounds paired with steel guitars, a lead steel, and a ukulele. At the bottom is a very creepy, eerie tone that complements the deep water levels it appears in. The remix heard in stage 3 of DDD's Resort has more reverb, which makes it a little less scary, while the remix heard in Volcano Valley stage 4 and 8 have more prominent vocals, sort of like Sauron's theme. Snowy Zone, seen in DDD Resort Stage 9 and 8, have a lot of trombones that remind me of sort of classic pulp movies with bells that also remind me of Christmas time. Fun Castle has a real polka influence. The Skull Gang is really cackling and sets them apart. The climbing tree theme from Volcano Valley Stage 10 comes off as very Latin influenced. The final boss music is chilling. In terms of returning music, Aditi's theme is, great as ever to see. So is the mini boss music. A lot of Kirby Air Ride music was also reused, such as Sky Sands for 4th and 10th stages of Sandy Canyon, Frozen Hillside for Stage 8 of Sandy Canyon. Magma Flow is showing up in none other than the 1st, 3rd, and 5th stage of Volcano Valley under the name Scalding Spring. All of these sound great. The side games also have tracks that are also fine, though kind of forgettable. Outside of the theme for Kirby's Quest, which is given 6 remixes in that one sub game, all of which really give off high RPG energy. Overall, the music of this game is a lot of fun and has a lot of gems in it. Sure, some of it might be a little forgettable, but overall, it's amazing. Now let's go on to the enemies that Kirby shall face while on this adventure. Now, I've decided to sort of organize this section starting with the main game before going on to the sub games. Starting with returning common enemies, there's Soror, as well as a big variant, a small variant, and a gray variant called the Mono Soror, which will dive bomb at Kirby if he gets something wrong at a quiz. Waddle Dees show up, though they're fairly rare and can toss bombs or fruits. There's also the gold variant, Gold Waddle Dee, that you have to kill but will flee from Kirby. A portrait of Waddle Dees also shows up and can toss bombs at Kirby. There's also the big Waddle Dees that are like Waddle Dees but big and are kind of rare. Gordos are back, functioning as the invincible enemies they are, as well as a giant variant that can instantly KO you. As for full-blown new guys, Wispy Woods now has an entire family of variants. There's the small Little Woods. There's Tower Woods, is this guy who's made out of multiple segments that you can knock off, but you gotta be careful to avoid the spines. Wobbly Woods is this guy doomed to die, and so he tries to get on Kirby by crushing him. Floaty Woods is a middling-sized tree that Kirby will have to tug of war into falling down so he can float down a river. So is Wiki Woods, who is effectively a weaker Wispy Woods who has a neat mustache. Next, we see this game's equivalent of the Waddle Dees, Bean Bon, who is pathetic. Flap Bon is a flying variant that hovers. Big Bean Bon is a little tougher due to being obese and thus can crush Kirby's from beneath using her girth. Mum Bon is effectively the dry bones of this game, as the Kirby can beat it, but it will come back unless crushed or killed by a stage hazard / jumbo candy. It can spit poisonous globs at Kirby, which, unless you tap them in time, can kill them / give them damage. Big Mumbon is, effectively a bigger variant that can split 2 globs at once, as well as try and squash Kirby with its fat. Gold Bean Bon runs from Kirby, and you have to kill it before it disappears for 100% completion. Zombon is a zombified bean bon that can turn Kirby's into other zombons. It functions like that of the Mumbons, in which case it can be endlessly spawning. The bigger variant, called Big Zombon, functions the same but can spit out 2 zombifying attacks instead of 1 and can crush Kirby with its big fat mass. There's Schnoz, which will try and crush Kirby with blocks that you must crush it. It's this little big pig guy. Big Schnoz is a tougher, redder, larger variant. Bigger Schnoz is the largest variant, green in color, and has a long tail that you must pull in order to defeat it. Stacktus is another common enemy that comes in 3 colors. There is the orange ones, which are harmless, green ones that will slowly approach Kirby and occasionally extend their spines that can hurt you. Then there is a teal variant that is permanently spiny. It can only be beaten by stomping them with other enemies you pummel. Luckily, usually the orange variant is on top of them. There's also a big variant of the green one. Crazy Stactus is another more typical cactus-like variant. Stickle is a sea urchin-like fish that is vulnerable only out of the water. A big variant can be fished out by the Kirby's. Bloco pretends to be a block before attempting to hit Kirby. There is a big variant as well as an icy block variant called Ice Taunt. And of course, there is a bigger variant of Ice Taunt. A Wadon is a clam that will try to flee Kirby, who can hit it for air bubbles. Bamsbach is a cloud dude that resets your progress in a room if it hits you, but doesn't really hurt you. So it's more of a nuisance than anything. Floof is a harmless cloudy thing that you can pummel for fruit. Flicker Floof is a darker gray colored one and will occasionally shoot lightning, but it's easy to avoid. Deco Floof is a purplish colored variant with a party hat that will drop cakes that make you fat, stunning you, which can be, a bit bad as it can lead to other enemies hurting you. Big Floof is, well, a big floof that often carries a medal and will try and flee from you, so you gotta get him. Birdies is a big fat bird that'll try and drop spiny nuts at Kirby. Burippers is a variant of a Blippers, which is purple and has an electric field around them. Blam Boom is a cannon. Blish is a very weird looking fish. Bobo is a fire-breathing pig. A bombeller is a helicopter/bomb. The Skull Gang are a recurring set of foes, including Scullies, which are these floating skulls that will try to drag Kirby into the air. Scullions are Scullies that are over 100 years old and will try and help Necrotius in this boss fight, so I'll save that to later. Bufu is a pig that has a skull on it and is part of the gang. Child Ship is a small silver UFO. Clank Sprout is a large antlion-like mechanical entity. There's two variants of it that exist. The teal one that's mostly stationary, where the purple ones will actively chase after the player and target them. Gondolus is a mechanical turtle that the Kirbys must destroy the shell of, otherwise you can end up falling into a bottomless pit. Gob Chomplin is basically a piranha plant. Glutbulbous is a flower that shoots sparks. Gloombat is a bat. Fufu is an ice-breathing pig. Flare is a demonic fire guy. Elongo is an eel. Cryball is a flying eye. Little Bat is another bat. Bratty Bat is another much larger bat. Kyurem is an odd pipe entity that are invincible and come in 3 variants. Red ones will blow out water. Green ones can suck in water, which can instantly kill Kirby's. Purple ones can alternate between the 2 currents. Jelly Frizz is a jellyfish which comes in a large and small size variant as well as a space version. I Gate is an enemy which will swap itself with normal doors, leading to ambushes with other enemies. Helmy is a set of armor that has a spear and will try and dive at Kirby. It comes back to life after being defeated, though. Helmet Mole is a heavily armored invincible enemy that aids Molly. Gravy pretends to be Graves until you approach, then it will attack. There is a brown variant and a purple variant that's much difficult. Magoo is a magma man. Missile Roller is a missile that has wheels. Moggy is a wiggler-like caterpillar. Moso is a blue furball who will occasionally flare up, revealing spikes. It's vulnerable in the air. A paler version called Space Moso are more dangerous as they can flare up also in midair. Oru is a bonkers-like gorilla that will take swings at Kirby when it gets angry, so you have to wait until it stops swinging to attack it. A spacesuit variant exists and has more health. Apparently, they achieved intelligence in order to find bananas elsewhere. Pozulo is a slug that spouts ink blobs at Kirby. There's a blue variant that gives more points called Space Posula, but is otherwise identical. Pricklebat is a spiny bat that is of decent size. Puff is a ghost with prominent lips. Polt is a creepy rock machine golem type thing. Rock Hand is a giant hand made out of rock that bothers you. Rogue Mole is a rare enemy that will toss nuts at Kirby. Rolling Ponds are these idols that are made out of stone that come in small and tall variants. Rolling Spike is similar but can release spikes from its side. Schwarz is a large orb and whose name is a reference to Schwarzschild's radius, which is the distance from a black hole at which point light doesn't escape. Scoopy is a squid that you have to pull on to get out of his way. Shelmick is a weird green clam thing that is just kind of hard to describe. Grinder is this large Mayan-inspired Thromp type enemy, which will try and stomp on Kirby, with a Mega variant as well. Gru Gloom is a shadowy entity that will try and eat Kirby. Comes in a blue variant as well. Ice Dice is a small blue piggish dragon thing that breathes ice blocks at Kirby, which can crush him. Ice Dinos are a larger variant with more health and can spit out larger, stronger ice blocks. Interestingly, there was meant to be a fire variant, though I mentioned that in the development history, so I won't go any further. Geg are an egg-shaped fly that has several variants, including a regular version, a armored mech Geg. Paka-Geg is a golden variant that can spit out a beanbon, and Spiky-Geg is a larger, invincible variant with impenetrable, spiky shells that will chase after the Kirbys for one stage. Spider-Roo is a spider-based enemy that comes in blue and green variants. Squishter is a relative of Squishy, which will twist like a tornado, launching a Kirby. It comes in two variants. The first is blue and goes in a set direction. The purple one will aim to get rid of Kirby. Tappy is a spinning top, while a larger variant called Stappy also exists. Stonic is a big fish thing that you must make dizzy to defeat. Stumpy is a log thing. Takotso is a strange octopus guy. Tortumi Thorns is a cylindrical turtle guy. Turi is a fish-like entity who fishes at Kirby. Warwiggle is a worm which inhales food that you can force out of its gut in order to defeat it. The last common enemy type in the main game is the snooze root that sleep as little plant guys until Kirby approaches and will then spit gook at Kirby. There are, in addition to the base green form, a purple form called the Puku snooze root, which swells its head and spits huge numbers of poisonous globs. Sand snooze root is an orange variant that can summon a haze of sand that obscures the vision of someone. Honestly, kind of annoying even if it can't directly hurt you. The red fire snooze roots, well, true to their name, shoot fire, and thus are rather dangerous. Now let's go on to something more substantive, the mini-bosses. Starting with those that are based on common enemies, Bigger Stack Test is a huge stack test with multiple segments. The heads are spiked, but do lower their guard, offering a chance to attack them. Their bodies, made out of 3 segments, can be deadly though, so you want to avoid them. And you fight 3 of them in Sandy Canyon stage/level 3. Big Warwiggle is a larger black version of Warwiggle that is fought in the 9th stage of Green Grounds and the 9th stage of Volcano Valley. It has pricky armor over it in the second phase, meaning that you can only hit the bulge where it's weak. Big Birdie is the mini-boss fought in Stage 3 of Green Grounds, where she will swoop at him and drop spiny nuts on Kirby. Giga Clank Sprout is a much larger, more mechanical variant of a Clank Sprout. You have to dodge its lunges long enough for it to drop a bomb. From there, you have to trick it into grabbing the bomb, which will stun it, allowing for Kirby to yank the chain in its mouth in a form of tug of war. It is fought in Stage 8 of Sand Canyon. King Eelongo is an unusually large eel made out of stone that you must destroy to defeat it. A slightly reddish variant is fought in Volcano Valley Stage 9 in murky water that has less air, so it's more dangerous. You want to avoid the actual spine, though, as it will hurt you. Buzzy Bat is a bat that will summon tons of bats, like little bats and such. It can also turn into a tombstone to crush Kirby with. Freezy Rex is a huge icy tyrannosaur like entity that is probably the biggest enemy in the entire game in terms of sheer size. It's technically invincible and can chase after Kirby, and you'll have to eventually reach the end and touch something that will defeat him. Great Gear is a huge gear that draws from Aztec design motifs. Fought in level 6 of Sandy Canyon and Volcano Valley level 9, you have to get in the right position to hit a spot that protects its vulnerable insides. It is a fun encounter. Hamp Star is a giant hamster that will try and hit Kirby with a mace. You can either try to destroy the shield, which takes a lot of hits, or try and attack him from behind, though it is hard and sometimes impossible. Mothership is a large purple ship that you fight in a very fun Galaga-type encounter. Shadowbite is a large shadowy dinosaur-like entity that must be avoided until the end of the stage where you can destroy it. And you gotta defeat him to get a medal using a curtain. Steel Snapper is a large robotic snake that you defeat by destroying each segment while their spikes are retracted. It can inhale water and will trap Kirby's inside as well as shoot tornadoes at him. Skull Seer is a large member of the Skull Gang who has fought as a mid-boss in Volcano Valley's 5th level / stage that will try and grab Kirby as well as summon Skullies to aid him. Pummel him 3 times and he's done. For Quad Gun is this demonic-like tank that you have to hit the weak spot marked by the colored button. But don't hit the skull one, as it will then do a mass attack of its own, and it's very hard to deal with that. Moley has been demoted from boss to mini-boss. First, he sends out 4 Mog Moles. The second phase has him send out 2 helmeted moles and 2 Mog Moles. And to beat the helmet moles, you gotta defeat the Mog Moles first, which causes them to take off their armor. The final phase has him toss bombs, and you must pummel him a number of times. Lastly, we got Turtle Tummy, which is a fat turtle that can create strong currents and sparks to hurt Kirby. It's a fun encounter, and you'll see a purple variant that's a little harder later on. But now let us go on to something even more substantive, the bosses of this game. And let us start with the returning faces before going on to the more original ones. So the first boss is what you might expect, Wispy Woods, though instead of apples this time, he drops spiny nuts, which makes sense since apples are a food item in this game, and you really wouldn't want to do that. You must dodge them. There's red ones that will shatter into pieces and green ones that will bounce along the ground. Wispy consists of multiple segments, which can, depending on the segment, either release mushrooms that send Kirby bouncing away harmlessly as a form of armor, or spikes that, well, can hurt you. In terms of an encounter, it's honestly a neat reinterpretation of a regular foe, even if it's not that hard and actually kind of easy. There is a rematch / zombified form seen in Necron Nebula that is purple, but is identical, so not really worth talking about that much. King Dedede is the boss of World 3. I already talked about this boss before in my Dedede boss fights video that I made for Christmas of 2022, where I ranked every Dedede boss at the time. But to keep it brief, his first phase has him toss bubble bombs at Kirby that you must then toss back at him, and do that enough times, he will fall out and you can pummel him. He also has waddledees that will throw bombs at you at points. Eventually, you do enough damage where his balloon is disabled, and you get a standard DD fight where he goes down and fights you. Honestly, it's really great. The rematch in Necron Nebula is, again, undead variant in purple, but it actually has the most change of any of the rematches, as there's some fruit that you can knock down, but otherwise, it's the same fight. Now let us discuss the new faces. First in Sandy Canyon, there is Lady Ivy, a plant lady with a cowboy hat. The fight takes place on a metal seesaw. She will try to knock the Kirbys off by slamming her head on one of the sides, which also dazes her, leaving her open to be attacked. Once she has low enough health, she'll attempt to use a vine to hold down one side, which you can attack. She can also shoot seed projectiles that will fall from the sky that you must dodge because they can't be destroyed. She'll also summon Stack Tie, which can bother you. Overall, a really great fight, and a step up from Wispy Woods while not being too hard. The rematch in Necron Nebula is purple, but otherwise the same. Skull Lord is the boss of World 4, Volcano Valley, and a giant skull-bearing demonic pig who is the lieutenant of the Skull Gang. The boss consists of two phases. First is him shooting fiery rocks at Kirby, which you have to toss in order to destroy them, as there are three fragile floors that, if hit, are destroyed and will send you into a pit. The last rock indicates a sort of tug of war, which if not stopped will result in instant death. The second phase has the Kirby's push Skullord down into an active volcano by pressing on the guy's weak spot, which is a welt on his head that he got from being hit earlier. You do this a few times and eventually you win. It's honestly a really fun and challenging encounter that is, very held up by the demonic presence, and as stated before, the rematch against him is the same but purple. However, the most engaging boss encounter is the final boss against Necrodius himself, leader of the Skull Gang. Sure, floating hands with a head is a common trope, but the odd clown nose makes up for it and gives him sort of a unique feeling. First phase of him has him using his two hands to pound the ground trying to kill Kirby. You gotta attack the weak spots on their back while also killing the Scullions that will come to try and heal those. The second phase has his hands become this weird spider-like thing that can clamp on Kirby. And you have to attack the center part while avoiding that. After enough damage, his hands are completely destroyed. The final phase has him going into a zero-gravity encounter that has some really beautiful backgrounds. He will drift around, firing crossbones at Kirby and summoning Scullions. He will fire a large laser using his mouth eye, but this also gives you an opportunity to damage it, as well as avoiding the laser. After enough damage, he is defeated. Overall, a great encounter that is a really high challenge and serves as a good ending to the main game. Going to the side games, many have old enemies, but three of them have entirely new faces. Field Frenzy has the disturbing Robo-Moly that functions like the regular Moly in this mode, and then you must tap it enough, otherwise you'll lose the round. Going to Kirby's Quest, there is a number of faces from the main game, like Bean Bon, Big Bean Bon, Waddledees, Dedede, Uhuru, Grindar, Stactus, and Fufu. There is also some classic enemies not seen elsewhere in the main game, like Bugsy, Dalroach, who is otherwise an NPC, Chef Kawasaki, Waddle-Doo, Capsule J2, Bonkers, Mr. Frosty, the Meta Knight, Sword Knight, Blade Knight, Meta Knight himself, and Sweet Stuff of all things. The final boss is even Dark Matter himself, which, I always approve of. There's also a secret fight against Galaxia itself that you get if you're replaying Chapter 4 of the subgame and have not missed any attacks. 4 entirely unique enemies appear as well. These include a bigger Bean Bon, which has a face only a mother could love, and a robotic enemy that is crap. Literally, that's its name. It's honestly kind of pathetic, but most shocking are the two cameos from Kirby Right Back at Ya. Max Flexor from episode 61, Fitness Fiend, and Chef Shiitake from episode 34, A Recipe for Disaster, both of which I've reviewed before, and their function sort of like Daro slash Chef Kawasaki in that if you miss them, they will flee, and you'll lose the opportunity to get a Maxim Tomato. Escargoon and Captain Waddle-Doo, who are both from the anime, can also cameo in attacks done by Dedede if you choose to intentionally miss an attack. Then you got Stratos Patrol. Here you can see several common enemies like a Bean Bon, a Big Bean Bon, a Bigger Bean Bon, Kaboo, Big Kaboo, Bronto Burt, Scully, Bugsy, Cappy, Flamer, Gordo, Kracko Jr., Little Woods, Scarfy, and Paracel Waddle Dee. In terms of bosses, you got Wispy Woods, who can drop fruit and shoot out his nose like a missile. Kracko appears as the second stage boss and shoots out lightning bolts. The second level's boss is Kracko, who will shoot lightning at Kirby, and is a little harder than Wispy Woods, but still not all that notable. The boss of the third stage is Mr. Shine and Mr. Bright. Mr. Shine will roll on the screen like a rolling cutter move, while Mr. Bright will release solar waves. Mr. Bright will be resurrected by Mr. Shine if defeated first, so you should destroy Mr. Shine first if you're worried about that, but if you defeat Mr. Bright 4 times, they will merge into one entity that has no name, but I think it should be called Mr. Brine, who can do both attacks, but they're much faster and is genuinely a much more engaging encounter. The Meta Knights are back as bosses for Stage 4. Mace Knight swings his mace around, which can reflect bullets. Javelin Knight shoots out laser beams. The second phase has you fight Axe Knight, who will toss loads of axes, and Trident Knight, who will charge across the screen at Kirby. It's a fun encounter with some high amounts of variety. Stage 5 has you fight Meta Knight, who flies around, fires sword beams, and splits into 4 different copies at points, as well as teleport spam. The final boss of the subgame is Nightmare, and has 2 forms, and is similar to the adventure fight, but top-down shooter, instead of, going from side to side. Kinda easy, but it's nice to see a classic foe return once again. Oh, and Rocky shows up in Kirby Curtain Call, the only enemy that's unique to that particular subgame. Last, we got Kirby Brawl Ball. Starting with the common enemies, you got Waddle Dee, Uru, Mogmole, Bean Bon, Dedede from the base game, as well as some entirely unique ones that are only seen here, like Biospark, Bouncy, Starman, Tookie, Twister, Twizzy, and Tack. From there, we see 4 bosses. Yes, pinball bosses. You never heard of that before? Kind of an interesting concept. I think the Kirby series is the only really one to do anything with. First is Wispy Woods, who's pretty easy and pretty much a one-to-one remake of his encounter in Kirby's Pinball Land, with the exception of the minor additions of 2 Little Woods to the side, which shoot out air bullets and cappies. Wispy Woods will shoot out a volley of gusts to try and stop you. Lolo and Lalala's fight is arguably even easier, as the two don't attack at all. Rather, their challenge comes from getting to them through obstacles like a blocky and blocks. It's kinda so easy I have really nothing to say about it. Heavy Lobster, however, is a big step up in terms of complexity and challenge. First, it can release mini drones that will target Kirby. Then it can release 3 fire bombs to relieve fiery residues that are very long lasting and will bounce Kirby away. He can shoot golden rockets that, function a lot like the drones but move much more effectively and faster. And lastly, he can fire paint bombs, which is the worst attack as it can obscure your vision. Overall, a real fun fight. The last boss is Marks, who is the best of the lot. He can shoot cutter-like beams, release seeds, set out a black hole, fire a huge laser, and a barrage of energy arrows. Honestly, it's a very mechanically rich and engaging encounter. Overall, the enemies are surprisingly diverse selection in terms of what you'd expect from a spin-off. They also each have a given amount of points they give, but I've decided to exclude that. For one, do you see how long this video already is? It'd be way longer if I included that. And two, unlike with Pinball Land, where I actually did discuss the points they give, the high scores are not really the meat of the game. They don't really matter, even in terms of like completion requirements. Now let us go on to those and give my final thoughts on the game as a whole. Alright, so in order to 100% complete this game, it is on the surface level relatively easy. Get all 186 medals and fill in the checklist. Now, getting the medals is not that hard, as you'll do it if you have even a decent sense of exploration, but the checklist is where things get devilish. Sure, quite a number are easy, like for example, clear a stage with 10 Kirby's, or beat up Golden Waddle Dee or Golden Bean Bon, or just, typical stuff. Others can be a bit challenging, like beating a stage by collecting the skull key, an item which I didn't talk about before as it didn't really flow well with the script, that will take you to an area where you'll have to beat skullies, one of which has a treasure chest, and you'll have to do that without taking damage, which can be a little difficult. But it is with the second to last thing on the checklist, Gold Star Champion, where you're going to have real problems. You see, when you beat a stage, there is a star given to you based on how you do. Bronze means no Kirby was lost. Silver means no Kirbys were knocked out. And Gold Star means yet took no damage, period, at all. Meaning you basically have to beat a level with no damage. But this champion, Gold Star Champion thing on the checklist requires you to do every level perfectly, which is quite the ask, especially for World 3 and beyond. It's not impossible, but it's probably the hardest challenge in any Kirby spin-off game, perhaps even the entire series. Aside from that, though, I think you'll have a great time. Just don't feel bad if you don't go all the way. It can be a little tedious to beat this game. As for my final thoughts on this game, well, it lacks the standard Kirby abilities, but is still a very solid and experimental spin-off with a unique control scheme that works well, and I think would do really good as a Pikmin game or an indie game as well. Hopefully, maybe they'll revisit it in the series, though the abandonment of touchscreens as a focus in gaming makes this seem very unlikely. I also found the references to the anime deeply appreciated and wish the series did that more. The main game is excellent, and the sub-games are like a box of chocolates, highly varied and sweet. I'd recommend this game if you're a Kirby fan or even just a general gamer. Sadly, outside of the original DS release, there has been only ever one re-release, that being for the Wii U Virtual Console, first in the EU on December 3rd, 2015, then in Australia on December 4th, 2015, February 29th, 2016 in Japan, and lastly in North America on July 28th, 2016. As for the quote-unquote Dark Age of Kirby, well, it's not as bad as some imply it is. The remakes of the original Kirby's Adventure and Kirby Superstar are great and, in my humble opinion, the best way to play those classic titles, with new additions while also respecting the original game and what it was about. While I'm not the biggest fan of Kirby Air Ride or The Amazing Mirror, both have their merits. Squeak Squad is admittedly one of the most average Kirby games of all time, and Epic Yarn and Mass Attack are great. But as a counter to that, they also have the absolute worst Kirby games in the forms of Waddle Doom and Kirby Slide. Plus, a lot of the mainline games weren't even released on consoles, so they didn't really get, in my opinion, as much love as they would have gotten otherwise. So I think that the reason this period of Kirby is considered so bad / dark compared to the classic era or modern era is due to a lot of the mainline games just kind of being average, or as I stated before, because they weren't released on consoles, rather being exclusively handheld, as well as just being held down by the absolute worst Kirby games of all time. That just sort of weighted, the average in a negative way. Whereas with the classic games, even the weakest of those are still perfectly solid. But I think there are gems in this dark age, and I definitely think you shouldn't write it all off. Plus, now we shall be going to my favorite Kirby game of all time, and being the one that launched the modern era, Kirby's Return to Dreamland. But that is for next time. I'm the Dark Master. If you like this video, like it, but if you loved it, consider subscribing and have a wonderful day.